How are you doing? You alright?
I'm alright, it's a nice top you're wearing.
Yeah, so it's all part of the new kit. I'm really stoked with it because it's very different, and it's good to have a real sort of like unique identity for Velo. Whereas the other stuff was a bit like same from other people who've been doing stuff, and I'm like, well, let's do something different. And I BioRacer do some really good kit. Right. You wanted to chat about a few things. I'm just going to put your training peaks up. How are you? You well?
I think I'm doing alright actually. One of my kids has got a cold, so I'm drastically trying to avoid being anywhere near him, just to stay away from virus machines.
Can you basically seal your room up and just ask for food to be like handed through a letterbox?
That's all right. I'm doing okay on that, and training has been going well. I think
it really has.
Consistent. I think the switch over that I think we talked about a few weeks back, where I switched over to doing it in the first thing in the morning, getting up a little bit earlier, doing it first thing in the morning. I mean, it's a bit of a rude awakening sometimes to do that, but certainly that has helped with the consistency, which I struggled a little bit when I was trying to fit it in during the day and at different times. But yeah, this definitely helps. So I'm going to try and stick with that.
Yeah, and I think, this is the thing. So in fact, I've literally just got a phone call to one of the guys that coaching. I was like, look, once you take control of that, once you understand what works for you, good things happen, because you're like, no, okay, look, I need to go to bed earlier. I need to get up early in the morning. I need to master my time. And when you figure out that works, then you get the consistency that you've had in training over the last couple of weeks, which is great. And I love that. And you're quite happy with the way that we're communicating and doing everything through training peaks and just chatting?
Yeah, that's working well, and giving the feedback, it's going well. The numbers are slowly increasing in training peaks. I'm paying a little bit more often, and I know I'm even you're sitting down, but I'm actually thinking of going to go outside riding this weekend as well. So it's looking all right.
I think and I've talked about this loads, but I think if you can get outside, it's just such good value for training and your fitness, and also for mental health as well as everything else. It's kind of the reasons why we rode bikes. I started riding bikes was to explore and feel free, and you can't really feel that on Zwift. But Zwifters will hate me for saying that, but I'm like, look, at every opportunity you can get outside, you just get better training effect from it.
Yeah, I do agree. So this weekend, that's
good. All right,
we're going to go for it.
And then you'll notice I've given you an FTP test next week.
Yeah, I thought that was hard. I've done one for several. It's like a London bus. I've done one for several years. All of a sudden, two come along at once.
Yeah, well, we've kicked that can down the road so many times. It's like, let's do one. Let's do some training. Let's see how you get on, and really sort of make sure that we're on the right numbers. I think you're capable of doing that, and that's why I like the 2 times 8 minutes, because it's a good one to do. It's hard, but it's not brutally hard, and it's just making sure that we're on the right track.
So I was thinking about kind of with that 2 by 8 minutes. It's obviously going. You do the first 8 minutes, then you have a little bit of recovery time. You're obviously fatigued going the second 8 minutes, like you're not going to have fully recovered. Is there some kind of benefit to separating them out?
I think, yeah. So this is something that a mate of mine, because there's a couple of different FTP tests that you can do. The 20-minute FTP test is mentally tough, and a lot of people find that just too much, so they do the ramp test. But I always find the ramp test either over eggs it or people under egg it, and they never quite get it right. Whereas the 2 times 8 minutes, if you can consistently get that power out, one might be slightly higher and one might be a little bit less, but then if you put them together, divide them by 2, you can get some pretty good numbers from it. And you look at the heart rate data from it, it'll show you whether the athlete has done a really good job of it or not. 8 minutes, if you're pushing out a decent or pumping out some decent watts for 8 minutes and repeat that again, and you hit the same numbers or very close to it, or even go higher on the second one, it shows you that it gives us decent data to derive a decent FTP for training. Plus also, I don't know about you, if you do 8 minutes hard and 8 minutes easy and 8 minutes hard, it's only 8 minutes, right? You forget about, it's weird, but you do the 8 minutes and think that was hard. You do the 8 minutes recovery and you forget about the first 8 minutes. You think, right, now I've got 8 minutes left. I just think it's generally been a better test for most people to do. They can mentally get their head around it. And I'm not a fan of the ramp test, although some people love it. And I think for you, I think the 8 minute test is good. You clearly do well in it, so it gives us good numbers.
Yeah, we'll give it a go. And I'm going to try. I think this time I'm going to try kind of the blind. Well, I won't blindfold myself, but I'll put a little kind of towel over the. Because I was too focused on the numbers. I was particularly heart rate numbers last time. So I'm thinking, let's see what I can put out if I just get my feeling.
You know my thoughts on that. It's like if you're going to do an FTP test, it's like follow the ERG and then take it off, put it on a gradient so you've got a bit of bite in the turbo, and then cover everything up apart from the time, and then just push. Because I think you're not beginner, you understand what your effort level can be, and sometimes we look at our numbers and we think that's all we've got. But whereas if you're just looking at the time and you're counting it down, so okay, right, there's my effort. It's like, well, can I keep going? And of course they do fluctuate a little bit, and it's classic. Everybody always looks at the numbers when they've fluctuated down the way and think they're doing badly. So by hiding that and just working on that effort level, you generally get a really good test.
Yeah.
Cool. And there are some things you wanted to ask me. You sort of sent me a message and said you wanted to ask me about sugar.
Yeah, I was listening to so I know there was a podcast came out about energy. It was a BBC thing about energy drinks versus caffeine, and they were talking about the problem with energy drinks is they're just high content in sugar. So for some reason I started looking at kind of some of the stuff I've got and like energy nutrition. So I know we talk about topping up some old water bottles even if we're on the turbo, but if we're doing quite a hard session on the turbo, take some energy drink. The stuff I've got is per serving is about 20 grams of sugar per serving. And then I was also looking at I've got a post-ride recovery protein, whey protein stuff. And again, I've got two different manufacturers, and one of them is again something very similar. What's that one? That one is 20 grams of protein per serving, and the other one's about 1 gram of 20 grams of sugar per serving, and versus like 1 or 2 grams. So, do you think we should be avoiding high sugar? Does it matter?
No and yes. The answer to that is I don't think this, and it's something when you sent me that message earlier, and I thought about this before we jumped on the call. I was like, well, we're training hard, so we need the carbohydrate and the sugar in there. So the fact you've got 20 grams of sugar, is that a problem? Is it problematic? No, because it'll help. It's part of the energy that you're putting into the system, so it'll help you drive hard because it's immediate carbohydrate and energy going straight into the muscles. Your body doesn't need to liberate it, it just takes it and goes, right, energy, go.
Yeah.
The difference, and I think the issue with modern social media and people talking about diet and sugar being terribly bad for you, and we should keep our insulin super low, and every bit of sugar you eat is terrible for you, and it's potentially ruining your cells, all those sort of things, is massively overplayed. When you're training this hard and you're eating energy mixes that has an amount of sugar in it, so I looked at my energy mix that I have, that's got about 20 grams of sugar in it. And I looked and I was like, is that a bad thing? No, because your body's used this upregulating insulin and thumping it straight into the cells. That's what insulin does. It grabs hold of the energy and chucks it straight into the cell because it's a transporter of energy. So is that a bad thing? No, because actually you're using that instantly anyway. So even though you've got high glucose levels and blood sugar levels, that's been turned into energy. So you're basically getting rid of it fairly quickly. Post-training is when you're depleted of glycogen in the muscles. If you have just whey protein with low carbohydrate or sugar in it, you can do if you're not doing very much the next day. But if you're doing a really tough training session the next day or a longer training session the next day, you could have a whey protein shake with carbohydrate mixed into it, and it'll help replenish the muscle glycogen that you've lost. Again, because you think about it, your energy stores are dropping down through training, and adding that back in is a really quick way of replenishing it back in. So no, I don't think it's a major issue. The issue I think most people are worried about is the fact that if you're fairly sedentary, you do no training at all, and you have a very overly processed diet and then eat a lot of sugar, is that bad for you? Well, yes, because it's probably very nutrient deficient and you're raising blood sugar levels way too high and not doing anything about it from an exercise perspective or movement perspective, and therefore your body's just having to store it all the time, and that's not good. But for us who are training hard and doing things like VO2 sets and then doing, harder hill rep sessions and long rides, no, it's not a bad thing. If you're feeling particularly fatigued after a training session, having the whey protein with carbohydrates is probably the right thing thing to be having post-training to help you replenish muscle glycogen and recover quickly. Because the way that I always teach it, and the way I always talk about it, it's like you want to be fueling for the work required, but you also want to be fueling to recover as quickly as possible to be able to do the work required the next day.
Yeah.
Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, it was nothing I particularly noticed before. I just kind of bought whatever. Probably whatever was on sale, and just used that. And it wasn't until I started looking at it, but I agree. I mean, we seem to be doing enough exercise to be able to get rid of it, and from what you say, it's not an issue. So I guess before the next FTP test, I can just spoon some sugar directly into my mouth just to top up the old levels.
Maybe don't do that. Maybe don't do that. What I was going to say is, I mean, what's a great thing to do? So as time goes on, for instance, so it's a good example of this. If you look at your training from the 18th to 19th, if you go and do a long ride and another long ride and you feel particularly depleted after the Saturday going into the Sunday, where we've got a long ride with some fatigue resistance efforts at the end, but you know that you need to make sure that you're feeling recovered and fueling for recovery after your long ride on a Saturday to go into your long ride on a Sunday to get the best out of those fatigue efforts. That's where potentially your whey protein and your carbohydrate mix is quite a good thing to have, because you're basically using it to recover from that training session on a Saturday, but also to make sure that you're ready to do that training session on a Sunday. That's generally the way that I look at it. So for instance, on the Thursday beforehand, you do hill reps. Do you need to be having a whey protein shake with carbohydrate after that? If you're eating a fairly decent meal and you're fairly soon after that training session, probably not. And also you have a recovery day after that, so you're probably going to replenish all that muscle glycogen. As long as you're eating plenty of protein throughout the day, you're probably hitting everything that you need. But again, it's down to you as an individual. You may come off that training session and go, I just feel like I need something a little bit more. Again, it's individual to how you feel on the day. It's not a bad thing to do. It's just you don't need to do it every time, but it's a tool in the toolbox. It's probably the best way to describe it.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, and I guess just looking at, I was just having a poke around Training Peaks. I know you've updated it a bit, and I think we've got quite a structured session for the next couple of weeks.
This is, I would say this, Peter, is like, this is like the ideal, and should things get in the way, we can tweak it and change it. So I put it in and go, look, what I'm trying to do over the next 1-2 weeks is build out the intensity and volume, and then we deload easy part of the week and we go volume again towards the latter part of the week. So it's like a 3-week build, back it off, allow yourself some recovery, and then we go again. Yeah, I was just looking, so I can see, obviously weekends are getting more intensive, and hopefully with the slightly better weather we've got, I will be we have to, and this is what I was going to chat to you about, is we have to have that volume in, because if you're going to go and do the 3-1-2, and I know you don't like doing long turbos, but I'm afraid if you can't get out, you have to do it in. Because if you're going to do 3-1-2, you cannot turn up there only have done short turbos. You just have to deal with it and get on with it. That's me being harsh, but you have to do it. Otherwise, you will get there and you'll curse yourself, or you'll get to a certain point with your ride in the 3-1-2 and go, I wish I'd done that volume. It has to get in there. So it's either a turbo of the nature that's planned, or getting outside. And 100%, I will say to you, if you can get outside and the weather's okay, go. Ride it as planned. Yes. You might hate me at the time, but you'll thank me for it once you get to the 3-1-2.
Which is 12 weeks away. Training Peaks are telling me about that, so it's coming around.
It's not that far away when you really think about it. And this is the thing, so like January went quick, right? Really fast. February's quite a short month. Then you've really got March and the start of April to sort of refine and push on with what you're doing. So what we do now really matters. The good thing in the UK, or at least unless of course they've got this like cold bomb that they're talking about that's going to hit over the next whenever they're saying it's going to hit, is hopefully the weather's changing so we can all get out a bit more.
Yeah. Because realistically, we're pretty much into single-digit weekends pretty soon until we go. So there's not that much time to get out and get the volume in.
And it's like just from my personal experience, from what I'm trying to do, I went out on Saturday and rode, and it was cold. I was cold, so I broke my ride up and stopped off at a coffee shop and tried to warm up, and knew that I had to do another hour afterwards. And internally, I'm saying to myself, I'll just go home. But I'm also then having a wrestle with myself, saying, well, if you do that, you've got to keep going because you've got this volume. You need to get it in with what you're planning to do this year. So it's like, okay, well, I'm warmed up, a couple of coffees at me, crack off. And it's just being really honest with yourself and saying, what am I trying to achieve here? Obviously, when I'm working with you guys, it's if it's dangerous, windy, all that sort of stuff, like just go home. But if you can endure it and you've got the right kit, get outside and do it. Get the training done. There's only so much. So the intensity stuff we're doing during the week is good, but that'll improve your power and your ability to push hard. But the volume work that we do at the weekend will see you right for doing the long distance stuff, and it's so important to get that in.
Well, we're gonna go for it the weekend.
All right, good. Is there anything on that front that you wanted to chat about?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the training plan looks good. I've been looking at training peaks. So we've got a few hill climbs planned for Sunday, which oddly I'm quite excited to get back out and do. I'm not quite figured out why yet, but I don't know. There we go.
I think I've written it. So in training peaks, I've given what you do inside is different from what you're doing out. Again, in real life, I'd love everybody to go on a long ride, and do hill reps and do back to back to back. But actually, that's not how people do it, and especially if they ride with their mates. So, well, I'm not going to do 8-minute hill reps with my friends because they're going to say I'm not doing that. Whereas if you put it in the ride and say, look, throughout the ride, if you can get 6 to 8 minute hill reps, sort of like within the ride, you'll get good training out of it. Just need to be mindful where that is. And I think that's good work. I've started playing around with that occasionally on the rides that I do, rather than going out and doing like specific hill reps. I'm lucky where I live is very hilly, so I can ride out and go, right, I'm going to ride for an hour and then for the next 10 minutes I'm going to pump up this hill. If you think along those lines, it's still getting the right training effect and we're still getting the volume that we're looking for. And it's a bit more fun than going back and up and down a hill.
Okay. Yeah, we're a bit screwed around here that we don't have that many nice hills so we've got to go and target somewhere specific. And I did, like you said, I mean, the mate I normally go out riding with, he wasn't that keen when I mentioned hill reps, but he's also going to Mallorca and doing the 312. So
is he a bit more keen now?
We'll find out on Sunday.
My thinking on that front is, if you go out on Sunday and you want to pick a hill and do hill reps and then carry on riding, do it. So do the 6 to 8 minute hill rep, repeat times 4, I think it is, and then just carry on. If you've got a friend of yours that's going to do that with you and you both work well together, do it. I'm
going to encourage him. We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Okay. Feel free to video that.
We'll try. We'll see. We'll see how it looks. We'll see how I look.
Cool. Ultimately, it's just that consistency of training that gets you where you need to get to. Yes, we can direct you with what you are doing, but that consistency of actually doing what you're doing is going to help you get to where you need to get to with your cycling. And I can't ask for anything more than that.
Yeah, it's going well. And I think one of the issues I've had previously is that I kind of start off with a lot of, this will be great, I'll get into it, and then it kind of soon wanes off. But obviously I think with the targeted training plan, the structured training plan you give me, plus also the target of I've got something to go to like Mallorca and ride, it's really, so let's say easy to hit those numbers, and even the early mornings aren't too much of an issue at the moment.
Good.
We'll keep it up.
Good. All right. Well, look, thank you. If you need anything, you know where I am.
Yeah.
I love the fact you put comments in Training Peaks. It just really helps us stay on track.
Great stuff. Cool. All right. Good to chat and catch you on Training Peaks.
Yeah, sure. Or maybe even Zwift at some point.
Yeah. Well, not for the early morning one, but maybe the...
That was horrendous.
If it was 6:30 a.m, I could make it, but I'm not can't quite get ready.
At 6 o'clock in the morning, doing a VO2 set is hard. There's always a moment when I set that up, because there's one of the guys that says, look, can it be 6? Because that's when I can make it. So I've structured it saying, right, 6 o'clock is when we start, because I know that's when he can do it, and I want him to be involved and everybody else involved. There's a moment when I set the meet up at silly o'clock in the morning, and then go and get coffee, and I think if no one turns up, I'm going to be really angry.
Appreciate a good catch up, and we will speak soon.